Hey, how's it going? This is going to be the Article One Senate Part Two. I hope to get through it, but I'm going to see how it goes. And if it's too long, I'll cut it a little bit shorter. Again, this is the website, mrkelly.org. If you get lost and confused, the remote learning has everything in order, and I upload stuff there. I kind of, yeah, and even the videos are there, and I've done it differently than I've done the other sections where it's in order. So this is like the March, and then the newest one is near the bottom. I'm thinking about fixing that so that the newer stuff stays up top, just because it takes a while to scroll down and everything to load up on my computer. So probably your computer too. But anyway, it's there. You can see this is this week. And then the week after, I put a stop sign, and it tells you what's going on. So it's all there. Um, if you get confused with how it looks in Google Classroom, which I know is different than what I see it, I guess I've never seen it from that angle. This has all been teaching as I go, learning as I go, with a lot of videos and stuff. Don't forget what I said about the video thing. This is a little screen, but if you click on this, it goes to the YouTube channel and you can watch it bigger. Um, uh, and the slides have information that's part of the answers to this. So, and again, you can pause it and make it easier on yourself. I want you to go through it. I want you to be engaged. The idea behind these quizzes are that you listen to the lesson, Anyway, last night we had an MTA meeting with the president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and we have one of these a week on Facebook. And then we have the local presidents that I do every Thursday night, and yeah, and this one was about remote learning and how it was going, and with the state switching to the school year being canceled for the rest of the year, what was going on. These are leaders, presidents of other associations. These the Mary, this lady here, she's the president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, right? So she's the big honcho of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. These are presidents from different districts, different schools throughout Massachusetts. I forget where they're all from. What I found interesting was that this lady had her son, who's a sophomore in high school, give some input on how the students feel about how the remote learning stuff is going. I just want you to hear what he says, because I get it. It's I can feel the anxiety. I you know I have like bizarre dreams at night. I definitely have anxiety. I use running to help with my anxiety. I use exercise. Um, and I watch a lot of comedy shows, more comedy than normal. I find that if I'm watching serious stuff, it's freaking me out a little bit. Um, I hope you're doing something for anxiety, because you definitely have. We all have it. We're all anxious about the unknown. And anyway, what this kid says is pretty good. I want you to hear it, and just so that you know that you're not alone.
Will Miguel to tell us the same thing, but from your point of view as a student, what is a day of remote learning like at your house?
If I have to admit, it's very stressful between things like emails, assignments, and a lack of support from educators. For like an example, I can't just simply raise my hand to get my question answered. I now have to email my teachers, and sometimes I don't hear from them. So like I have to postpone that assignment until I can finish it. And as well as distractions. It isn't a school environment anymore, so it's harder to focus on my work. Sometimes I have to ask my mom to borrow her office to recreate my school environment, but it sadly just isn't the same.
Right. And I'm sure your mom needs her office at the same time that you, so she can do her own job for her own students. Well, why do you think it's hard for your teachers to get back to you?
I would have to think it's because while at the same time I've seen what my mom does, it's like Heidi also said, it's very labor intensive. My mom's always constantly here, and if I see how much a teacher works, I can only imagine it's the same thing for other teachers. So when she has to have 20 other students, asking her questions, I it's very hard for just educators to do anything in general. So I would believe it's as tough as that, but my mom makes it look easy.
And I think that speaks really to the overall understanding of why we really can't replicate school at home, whether I'm in my kindergarten classroom or you are all in each of your classrooms. When a student needs us and we are all in the same room, we have multiple ways of meeting their needs. I can pull together the 5 or 6 kids who didn't get it while I ask the other kids who got something to continue working or to go start something new or to pick up a book. Or I could take my group of students who doesn't get it and say, go talk to your math partner. There's a structure that exists in the classroom that can't possibly be replicated at home. And you see this comment on the screen from Rachel Head, and we also have Michelle Lippens, who's a parent and an educator, and her husband is an essential worker. She tells us she's juggling kids, she's juggling her students. So with that, I'm going to ask Jahira and Jessica. Jahira, maybe you go first. Parents, and this because you're a parent, parents are worried that remote learning puts their child at risk of being behind next year. But
all right, I don't want to just go on that forever because I could, but I just wanted you to hear from another student, that we get it. It's not the same, and it is a little. It's different and it's tough, and and it's also hard for us to not be able to communicate with you. When we get into this next phase, I hope that we are able to. At least we're talking about office hours where I would assign a certain chunk of time once a week for each of my blocks that I would be online and you could talk to me. I think that might be good. I know it's for me to talk to other presidents, to other teachers. I look forward to those times. Like I said to you, I hope that you're doing that yourself with your friends and staying in communication. Good. I just got a message just now from one of you, which is good. I want you not to be afraid to do that, to send comments in through Google Classroom, ask questions. I'm here. I'm doing office hours. I am sitting here and I'm working. So, and I'm not working for anything but the 110 of you. You're my job still. All right, so let's go back to this slide. This slide is just remember what we did before, where the British Parliament, with one of the things that James Madison liked, the founding father back in the convention, one of the things that he really liked. Oh, this has got the cool pointer. I got to get it. I love this pointer. It's the only thing I actually like about this program compared to the Smartboard program. Is this? It's fantastic. It's almost like the more you know. So the House of Lords. Remember that first was the setup. The Lords were advising the king, and this was the king's palace, and then it caught fire and he moved, and but the Lord stood there. And then as people started making money in commerce and stuff like that, they wanted a voice in government, and that was the House of Commons. But people were afraid because a lot of the common people couldn't read or write, or they didn't follow politics, they didn't go to the best schools, they didn't go to college, most of them, and they thought, before anything reaches the king's desk, it ought to be filtered through the House of Lords. And they were from noble families that were well educated since birth, tutored and all that stuff. So they would stop the garbage from getting there. And that's what our model was. We also thought that, the House of Representatives would be like the House of Commons, and that we thought that anybody could get elected to it. It's a 2-year term, and you didn't have to go to school. You didn't have to go to college. You don't have to, there's no real requirement other than a certain age. But we wanted to be able to filter before it got to the president's desk, so they wouldn't just pass stuff that's kind of a waste of time for the president. So before it gets there, but we didn't have lords. So they came up with the idea of the Senate, and the way that they did it was, if you remember, at first until 1913. It's going to say on the next slide. I'm guessing the number. I don't have it off the top of my head. But until an amendment to the Constitution, the senators were picked by the state governments. So they would pick people who were professors in political science. They would pick people who were representatives that were really good representatives, that were really good. They were politicians. They would pick former governors. So the people that were in the Senate were skilled politicians, much like in the House of Lords, and they'd be able to filter out the garbage before it got to the president. So it had to pass both chambers before it got there. Let's go. So this is where we were. We did this stuff kind of last time. Don't forget there's 100 members, 2 per state, 50 states. They serve 6-year terms. And this is where it gets a little bit chunky confusing. And this is one of the things I really want to talk to you about today, this chunky confusion thing. And it might be just this page that I do, and then I'll do the Mitch McConnell, who is Mitch McConnell thing another day. Just because I just think that, I don't know how much I can do. All right. So anyway, remember they are 6-year terms, so they have a longer term, so they don't have to worry as much if they're not as responsible to their constituents, even after the amendment changed that they're elected by their states. They still have a 6-year term. But one of the things the founding fathers wanted to do was to make sure that even if there was like a huge upheaval in an election, and all the senators lost their election, you would still have 2/3 that weren't up that year, and the 2/3 of experienced politicians. So only 1/3 are up every 2 years. So that's how it goes. So every 2 years, the whole House of Representatives is up. They all have to get reelected, every single one of them. And after the election that's held in November, in January, it starts the next Congress. Like we're in the 118th Congress or something like that, right? So that's kind of how it works. And same thing happens in the Senate. In January, they start after the election a new Congress, but it's they're in Congress together with the House of Representatives. But only 1/3 are up in every 2 years. So I had the really cool thing of doing this on the smartboard because I could write on the smartboard. I can't really write on this. I have this fancy pointer, but I can't write on it. Let me show you this. So I'm almost faking the writing on it. So there's 3 classes, 1, 2, 3, and every 6 years the class is up. So one thing that happens is that each state cannot have 2 senators in the same class. Each state has 2 senators in either class 1, 2, or 3, which means that each state doesn't have a senator for one of the classes. So there's like a year off with no senator. Every 2 years, there's a year that the state doesn't have anybody running for reelection, right? Kind of weird. And they call it classes. So in 2016, I think that's where I'm starting, the class 3 got elected, and they won't be up again until 2022. I don't know what happened over here. He's just skipping ahead. 2022. And then if they get reelected, they won't be up again until 2028. So it goes every 6 years. And that seat, even if like one of the people in that seat, let's say that one of these people in the seat dies in 2020, that seat, which is a seat that Massachusetts doesn't have, by the way, we're not in the 3rd class. That seat has to have like a temporary senator. Each state does it a little bit different. Usually the governor appoints someone temporarily to represent them in the Senate, and they have a special election. So if someone like died in 2020, or they resigned, let's say they resigned, they got a job or something, or they were just not doing well, they resigned. So the governor would appoint somebody, they have a special election, and then that person would only serve for 2 years because that seat is always up on that cycle. No matter what happens, that seat is up in that cycle. Elizabeth Warren is in this class 1. She just got reelected in 2018, right? And so she's not up again until 2024. She's in this group. And 1/3 of the Senate is in that group too. And if she gets reelected in 2024, then she won't have to run again until 2030, right? That's how it works. This is the election that we're having now, right? And this is Ed Markey. And I told you that Ed Markey, he's in class 2. So Ed Markey, our senator, is in the fight of his life because our representative is running against him, who's really well known, Joe Kennedy. And so if Joe Kennedy beats him, let's say he does, then Joe Kennedy doesn't have to run again until 2026. Where will you be in 2026? Yeah. And that's how it works. So the classes, and this kind of goes through the classes, it's a little bit confusing on here because of the fact that they get elected in the fall and they get sworn in January, so it's a little bit off. You know what I mean? Year wise. So this is class 1, and do we have a class 1 person? Class 1. This is Elizabeth Warren, right? So if I scroll down here, I should see Elizabeth Warren. There she is, right? So she's in class 1. So these are the people that got elected in class 1. And they won't be up again until when? It's tough for my brain. 2024, and they'll get sworn in 2025. That's why it's saying 2025. Class 2 is marvelous. Ed Markey is in that one. He's running for re-election, right? So he if he wins, he won't have to get reelected again until 6 more years. Jack Reed from Rhode Island is up in this one too, right? And then there's class 3, which we have nobody in. These are the senators that are in that class. It's the seat though, and that can be really, really confusing. But don't let it be confusing. It doesn't really have to be confusing. I can get rid of these. So that's how it works. There's these classes, and they're up. That seat is up every 6 years. I just want to point out this too, that there are 23 women in the Senate out of 100. Again, 51% of the population is women, but we have 23 women in the Senate. We still have a ways to go. Good. Yeah. All right, so back to this other slide again. Remember that since 2013, we amended the Constitution. They're elected by the people now. Because they are supposed to be the upper house, they have certain jobs that are, I talked about it in that video. They have to confirm all the appointments from the president. They have to approve judges to the federal benches, including the Supreme Court and all the other judges in all the federal court system. There's hundreds and hundreds of them, and and remember that the vice president was supposed to be the person who ran the Senate, because they figured the founding fathers were like, hey, the vice president really doesn't have much to do. But my buddy John Adams wouldn't stop talking. So they made the rule that the vice president can actually participate in debate. So the vice president only, can preside if he wants. He can come in and preside over the debate and sit there and, drop the hammer down and stuff. But he can only vote. He can't participate in debate, but he can only vote if there's a tie, which happens. I mean, we're a pretty close Democrat-Republican country, and the Senate definitely reflects that as far as the states go. And So once in a while, you'll see the vice president in the Senate chamber, and he's only there if he's there to break a tie. Other than that, they have someone called the pro tempore. And the pro tempore is the person that basically is like, remember the video that I showed you of the House of Representatives? And it wasn't Nancy Pelosi running the debate, and they still called them Mr. or Madam Speaker. The pro tempore is a temporary president of the Senate, temporary vice president. The founding fathers, though, put the pro tempore in the line of secession. And so the line of secession, and like I said, they have all different people being pro tempore. You turn on C-SPAN, and be careful turning on C-SPAN, because if you can't get it off, you're going to be, you'll fall asleep pretty quick. But you have a different person up here running the meetings all the time. But what happens is, like, when the new session begins every 2 years, the party that's in the majority, which now is the Republicans, they pick a pro tempore, who is basically the fake president of the Senate when the vice president isn't there. And it's kind of an honor because it's an actual formal thing, and you're in the line of secession. So what they did, since the chances of the secession going, that the president, look at the line of secession again. I showed you this last time. President is the president. Hello, I'm trying to make this move, but it's not moving. Seriously, it's not moving. Oh, all right, how you doing? If anything happens to the president, the vice president, Mike Pence takes over. Right? If something happens to both of them, which the odds of something happening to both of them at the same time, then Nancy Pelosi is next in line. If something happens to the three of them, now what's the chances that the three of them at the same time, die? Then it goes down to the pro tempore, which is what they do is whichever party's in control give this as an honor to the person who's the longest serving member of their party. So Chuck Grassley is the Senate pro tempore right now, and he is he's from Iowa, and he's the longest serving senator from the Republicans. Patrick Leahy is the longest serving for the Democrats, but I don't know which one's been in there longer, but they've both been in there for like a long time. I don't know when he first got elected, but yeah. So it's an honor, and hopefully it never has to be used. So that's Chuck Grassley. All right, let's look at the election results. The election results from 2018 in the Senate, and this is the numbers in the Senate. Now remember, only 1/3 of the Senate was up for re-election in 2018. The Republicans already held control of the Senate, and they maintained control of the Senate, is what happened. They actually gained a few seats, it looks like. Maybe? I'm not sure. They might have gained one. They gained 2 seats. It says right there. Sorry. So it was closer before. It's 53-47. It was 51-49. That's kind of crazy. But you can see that it's a slim margin. But looking at this map, the ones with the lines are the ones they flipped, right? So Florida used to have a Democratic senator. Indiana had a Democratic senator. Missouri had a Democratic, and North Dakota had a Democratic senator. So they flipped a few. But so the Democrats flipped too. Nevada used to have a Republican senator, and Arizona. Look at all these other states that didn't have anybody running. Think about that. Why wouldn't a state have any senators running? Yeah. And that will be a question I definitely ask. New Hampshire had nobody running. And the reason why is because there are 3 classes, and these are the states that don't have anybody in this class, which is class 2, was it, that Elizabeth Warren's in? Because if you look here, Elizabeth Warren won, and she's not up again for 6 years. But these are the states that don't have any senators running in this class. unless they had to have a special election or something. Right? That's very confusing, I know, but it's just a math thing, and you hate to get math mixed in here. Let's take a closer look at Massachusetts. This is how Elizabeth Warren actually did. So let's look at the. I clicked on that when I did the practice. And yes, I do practice. It doesn't seem like it, but I really do. I can't just. This is a two-takesy. All right. So this is kind of cool because it shows you how the Senate election went in 2018. And the blue is Elizabeth Warren. The lighter, it means it was closer, and the darker means it wasn't that close. She won big. She won 60% of the vote to 36. You can see Rehoboth. This is Rehoboth. And if I click on it, she didn't win Rehoboth. Like I said, this is a Republican area over here. She didn't win Dayton either. She did worse in Dayton. She didn't win Berkeley. She didn't win Lakeville. She got tromped in Lakeville. I guess Middleborough. She didn't do well in Middleborough. This whole corridor here is very Republican. That's why they divided up when they gerrymandered. So that's every town. And you can see that. I just wanted to point that out. So that's it. I mean, knowing that, I'll go on. I'm gonna do the who is Mitch McConnell. So that's how it works. The Senate is supposed to be this filter, and that's the election stuff. So let's go to the next slide. Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell is the majority leader, and in all essence, he's the guy who runs the Senate. Just like Nancy Pelosi runs the House of Representatives, she's the Speaker. He's the majority leader, and he controls basically all the debate. He controls what gets talked about on the floor. He's the guy. He runs the Senate just like Nancy Pelosi runs the House of Representatives. But again, they have different duties. They have to approve all the cabinet officials. They have to approve judges. They have to ratify treaties, right? And yeah, that's the big thing. So who is Mitch McConnell? He's got a pretty good relationship with Donald Trump. His wife is actually in the cabinet, in Donald Trump's cabinet, and she's pretty famous. But he is one of the things I like a lot about Mitch McConnell is that he is a history guy. He went to the University of Louisville and got a bachelor's in history, and then he went on to go to the University of Kentucky law, and he got his law degree, and he passed the bar exam. And then he got into politics, and he became an intern for a senator from Kentucky in 1964. That's before I was born. And then he became an assistant to another senator from Kentucky, Senator Cook. And then under President Ford, he was the assistant deputy attorney general, and he worked alongside future Justice Anthony Scalia. And then in 1984, he ran for the Senate. And he was running against a very popular Democrat from Kentucky. And he beat him by like a hair. It was way close. His campaign slogan was switch to Mitch. That's just very funny. He doesn't look like a Mitch, does he? He doesn't. He looks like a law professor, history person, which he is. I've seen some of his chats on like C-SPAN where he talks about history and the history of the Senate and some of the people that I really love. He's good at it. I really enjoy that. All right, let me play this, his little biography of him, his little story, and then we'll go into his website, and then, we'll call it a day.
People read your book, they'll see in the beginning of it that there are defining moments for you. One of them happened.
All right,
People read your book, they'll see in the beginning of it that there are defining moments for you. One of them happened, I mean, for goodness sake, when you were a toddler, right? I mean, you had polio.
Got polio when I was 2 years old. My dad was over in Europe fighting the Germans. My mother
was about 10 years before the vaccine.
Yeah, it was. And my mother was basically struggling with the comeback. polio has largely been eradicated today. But what would happen is you'd have a flu-like episode,
Right.
and when it went away, you could be everything from dead to completely recovered, or all various forms in between. It affected my left quadricep, the muscle between the knee and the hip. Their fear was that I would have to wear a brace the rest of my life. Happily, we were within 60 miles of Warm Springs, Georgia, which was a treatment center that President Roosevelt had set up for polio victims. My mother took me over there. They taught her a physical therapy regimen. She literally watched me like a hawk for 2 years and administered this 4 times a day. My first memory in life was the last trip to Warm Springs. They said to my mother, I think he's going to be a normal kid and be able to walk without a brace and without a limp.
Really, that's your first thing that everybody always asks, what's the first thing? That's the first thing you remember.
First memory of life. And but an early lesson.
How old were you?
I was 4.
Oh.
Yeah. The episode was from 2 to 4. And I thought, it was probably a defining moment for me. We have these things that occur to us very early in life that are significant down the road. And I thought the message was work hard, keep at it, and the chances are pretty good you can overcome the barriers that are before all of us in trying to achieve what we hope to achieve.
And so much of that went into kind of shaping who you were. And you wanted to be a senator for a long time, which I thought was interesting as well. I mean, you almost planned it, plotted it. You took positions that would set you up for it from the time you were a fairly young person in your 20s.
Yeah.
After, as an aside, being a professional baseball player apparently didn't.
Well, after giving up a bases-loaded home run,
I read about that
in an all-star game, I decided maybe I better go in a different direction. So I picked a different kind of competition and ended up running for president of student council in high school, having a successful campaign, and one thing led to another, and I found myself in Washington as an intern to a senator during the period when the civil rights filibuster was broken. And I thought, well, maybe someday I might be able to pull this off myself. It's kind of a long shot.
Well, you thought it then. So one thing didn't really lead to another. You had it in your head the whole time.
I never did anything on the spur of the moment. This is an instant gratification era we're in where overnight sensations pop up all the time. For me, it never worked that way. I was always a little bit skeptical about simple answers to complex solutions or thinking you could start late and succeed.
Right.
So I was always a planner. And for me, I think it worked. I think it probably works for most people.
Well, I would think as the Senate Majority Leader, the United States, most people would say that worked. So thanks a lot for coming in. Good luck with the book. I mean, it's a different side of you, I guess a lot of people don't know about. But
thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Senator Mitch.
So his book is called The Long Game. I'd like to read it. I haven't read it. And it talks about him, like I think that's a good interview of him because he's made fun of a lot on TV because of, they call him the turtle and stuff. He's a guy that worked hard. Again, a person who overcame something, and the polio was incurable, and it was before the vaccine, and he beat that, and then he became a fighter. It shaped his life. Some of the struggles that we go through make us stronger. That's what I was saying to you last time about like what we're doing now stinks. It's not. It stinks. I mean, yeah. I had tickets to go see a play with one of my best friends. I was going to see a comedy routine in Boston with another friend in May. All canceled. There's nothing. I mean, I get it. You guys are missing out on so much stuff. But like Mitch McConnell says, sometimes these things, there's strength in them. There's going to be something that you're going to get out of this that other people don't have. And if you work on that and, start plotting your way. He didn't figure out the Senate thing until later in high school. He said he was a pitcher, and he jokes that he gave up a bases loaded home run, and he decided to leave baseball. His first pick was to be a professional baseball player, which is kind of funny. But and you can understand that though as a sophomore in high school. And then he went into politics, and he interned under a senator, and then became an assistant. And he's a very effective majority leader. There's no doubt. He's done more for the Republican Party than just about anyone. His his teaming with Donald Trump. They're not exactly the same kind of Republicans, but he gets a lot of judges confirmed for the Republican Party, and they're lifetime appointments, and they will definitely influence the country for years and years to come. So here's his website. This is the Majority Leader website, and yeah, again, it's like the formal Majority Leader website for Mitch McConnell, and he'll stay Majority Leader. He's very powerful. He controls the Senate, and he'll be the Majority Leader. In this next election, he's up for re-election. He's a hard one to beat. I mean, I don't think he's going to lose Kentucky, but it wouldn't be the first time that a Majority Leader lost a re-election. But if the Republicans keep control, which it looks like they will, early polling, he'll stay as Majority Leader. If they lose control, if the Democrats have a majority, then he'll become the Minority Leader, which he was before the Republicans gained control. All right. So then his personal Senate website, because he represents, just like Nancy Pelosi represents a district, he represents the state of Kentucky. And he's in the same class as Markey. So he's up for re-election. And if he gets reelected, he'll be in there for 6 more years. He was born in 1942. I can't figure that out that quick. He's like 70-something, right? So this is his normal website. Again, office hours. Office. He has an office in Louisville. He's got one in London. Are you kidding me? Where's London? It's got to be in Kentucky. So he's got a ton of offices throughout the state. Because again, as senator, you need to have multiple offices because you represent the entire state. All these dots. And Kentucky, land-wise, is so big. He's probably got to have these. Otherwise, you're not going to drive like 3 hours to go meet with a senator. This way, he's within probably, 40-minute drive to anybody in a given day or so. He can't be in these offices all the time. But his main office is in Washington, D.C., obviously. Right? So he has quite a few offices. I didn't know that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But he probably has a skeleton staff in most of those and a main staff that moves with him to staff them. But again, they work for the entire state. They represent the state of Kentucky. Good. And then the Minority Leader, it's just like the Minority Leader in the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy. He was the Minority Leader. He's a Republican in the House of Representatives. And I mentioned him. The Minority Leader kind of runs the Minority Party, which is the Democrats in the Senate. And it's Chuck Schumer from New York. This is him. You might have heard of Amy Schumer. That's his niece. She's a comedian. She's pretty funny, actually. Don't look it up because she's a little bit on the, not appropriate. But Chuck Schumer, smart, powerful politician. Again, if the Democrats were to take control, he would become the Majority Leader. The Majority Leader before Mitch McConnell was Harry Reid, and he left politics, so he didn't run for re-election. He retired. He's from Nevada. So that's him, and that's pretty much all I want to do today with the Senate and W quiz, and again, watch the video, stop, pause it, go back, all those kinds of things, and all right. Have a fun educational afternoon. Go get them. Don't hold back.